This is just another bad idea. Hello everyone, it is April from Getting Hookah With It. I am currently surrounded by thrillers, horrors, gothic fiction. Today, right now in this video, we're gonna go through my horror books and I'm going to dwindle them down. Why am I doing this? Because I have no more room on my shelves. Yes, I just finished the KonMari series on my channel. However, I filmed all of that last year. I was still pregnant with Nora when I filmed that. So over the course of the year, I have picked up more things. So the plan with this round of unhauling is to be as ruthless as it can be. And I'm going to pick up all of my books and I'm going to put them into 3 categories. One is books that seem to always go on my TBRs that I clearly really want to read. The second is books that I sometimes think about putting on my TBR. And the third category is books that never end up on my TBR. And I probably wouldn't even read them in 20 years and they're just stuck here. And someone else should read them, really. Someone else should read them. So we're going to kind of also go through books that I have read as well. Let's just start. Let's start, okay? All right. Apart in the Dark by Anya Alborn. This is 2 novellas. I read The Pretty Ones, and it was just okay. I'm actually going to pass this along because I don't think that I'm going to read the other one, and that's fine. That's fine. Okay, next is Dracula. Now, everyone who is watching this is going to go, what? Why would you even consider taking this off of your TBR? But the fact of the matter is that I don't know how high up on my TBR this would ever be. I have no inclination to read it. So I'm going to get rid of it. Goodbye, Dracula. Slade House, another book that I just don't have any inclination to read. I just don't. So that's going. Suffer the Children, also going. Wow, I'm really doing well so far. The Silence I read and I really enjoyed, and I actually want to keep this on my shelves. Ditto for I Am Legend. I really loved that. Bird Box, up until very recently, was my favorite horror novels. This will be staying on my shelves. Okay, good. So The Troop is a book that I often think about putting on my TBR, so that's gotta stay, even though it's incredibly gruesome apparently. And then there's Let the Right One In. This is gonna stay because I've wanted to read this a bunch of times and it sometimes goes on my TBR in my mind. Good for like Halloween. Oh, look at that. It's my favorite horror book of all time now. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Absolutely wonderful. That will stay. Barry got me this beautiful edition of A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Trombley, which I adored. So this is totally staying. I think, is this signed? No, probably not signed. It's a special edition though, which is super exciting. Oh no, it is signed! Yes, Paul, I love ya. Been struggling with his latest works, but that's okay. Home Before Dark by Riley Sagar. I know a lot of people would end up putting this in the thriller category, but I actually think it got more of a horror element than anything else. I ended up giving this, I think, 4 stars, and after some time, I think I might bump that down to 3. Very unpopular opinion. I'm going to pass this along, probably to my mom. I think she would like it. Next up is Ring and its sequel. I am really interested in reading this series. It's the same series that's based on the movie is based on. And yeah, I sometimes think about putting that on my TBR. So those are gonna stay. Here's a head full of ghosts as well. I don't need 2 copies of the same book, so I'm gonna pass this along. Hey, Lock Every Door. I loved this. Again, a lot of people would categorize this as a thriller, but it was heavily influenced by Rosemary's Baby, and you can really sense it, and I loved this book. I think this is probably my favorite Riley Sagar, so this is staying for sure. The Demonologist by Andrew Piper, I just don't want to read, so that's gonna go. In the Meantime by Paul Trombley. Now, I love Paul, but I really struggled with his last short story collection, and I think it's just time to let this go. I do love Paul, but yeah. Dead Girls by Abigail Tartlin. I really enjoyed this, and this is staying. The Haunting of Hill House. I just felt okay about. I didn't adore it, so I'm gonna actually pass this along. Next is Ghostly, a collection of ghost stories. And I do actually think about reading this every Halloween or October. I'm like, I'm going to read a short story every single night. And I think I should actually do that one of these years. So that sometimes goes on my TBR. The Broken Girls by Simone St. James, I sometimes think about putting on my TBR. Again, a lot of people would put this under the thriller category, but there is a supernatural element to Simone St. James' story, so I disagree with them. Halcyon, I just don't really have a real interest in reading, I think, so I'm going to pass that along. Ooh, Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky. I really want to read this. This often pops up in my brain of things I need to read soon, so that's staying for sure. Mallory is the sequel to Bird Box. It's staying 100%. I need to know how that ends. The Ruins by Scott Smith is another one that I think of, especially in the summer, of putting on my TBR, so that's gonna stay. The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Trombley, one of my favorite horror books, staying. Thornhill is stunning, and I think I could read this honestly in one sitting. It's a bit of a graphic novel, ghosty kind of story, and that's definitely staying. Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Again, another horror classic, but this one I really do want to read. I've heard mixed things about Inspection by Josh Malerman, but I still want to read it. I think this is more YA horror, but I do want to read it myself. We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I'm desperate to read this. I also love this edition, so that's staying. Oh yes, The Shining by Stephen King. I absolutely want to read this so badly. I'd actually like to wait to read this for the winter time, because it takes place over the course of a winter, and that's staying. In the House in the Dark of the Woods. This is literary horror. Many people don't like literary horror. I am one of those rare people that do like it, so that's gonna stay. The Wasp Factory sounds so creepy, and this sometimes goes on my TBR, so I'm gonna keep that. The Invited by Jan Mann, a ghost story that I really am interested in reading. Oh, The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters, another literary ghost story, that's staying. Loved it. Ditto with The Turn of the Screw. You could never pry that from my hands. Daughters of the Lake by Wendy Webb. This is more light horror. It's a lighter ghost story, but I am here for this. So yes, that's staying. As is The Haunting of Maddie Clare. I just am apparently keeping the rest. Disappearance at Devil's Rock by Paul Trombley. I often think about putting that on my TBR. Experimental film, I sometimes think about putting on my TBR. Haven't read her yet, and I think it would be a real treat. So, keeping. I can't believe that I found this at a Value Village. Misery by Stephen King. That's staying. I want to read his older stuff. Just gonna bring in the rest of these books. And honestly, I think I am keeping the rest of it. The House of Leaves, I'm terrified of reading this book, I'll be honest, but it does something with structure that I think should be and could be quite interesting, so I'm going to keep that. If You See Her by Anya Alborn, I absolutely need to read and need to keep. Another ghosty kind of story, and I think it's her latest book. The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. I loved this ghost story and reread it recently, and I really liked it again, so I'm keeping that. Kill Creek, and also Violet, both by Scott Thomas. I want to read both of them very badly. The Merciless is part of a series that I really want to read. Melmoth, I want to read. This is literary horror. I've heard some bad things about this. I want to decide for myself. I'll happily DNF if I'm not liking it, but I want to keep it. And then, okay, a book that's going. The Boy Who Drew Monsters. I think it's time to get rid of this because I'm not desperate for it. Okay. Oh, this is good. I've got a little stack of books that I'm going to be getting rid of. Shall we go through? Well, The Boy Who Drew Monsters, Halcyon, The Haunting of Hill House. Oh, it's just called The Haunting here? I thought it was called The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. In any case, in the meantime, The Demonologist, A Head Full of Ghosts, Home Before Dark, Suffer the Children, Slade House, and Dracula, and then A Part in the Dark. And I think that's a good little stack to get rid of from my horror bookshelves. And I'm really eager to read all of these books that have stayed. So let me know in the comments below. Do you think I'm also crazy doing this? Again, you know, one thing that I always think of when I'm unhauling is I'm probably unhauling some pretty amazing books, and I recognize that, and like everyone needs to read what they love reading. I just want to read all of the books on my shelves sooner rather than later. I can always go to the store and buy them again if I'm like suddenly in dire need. I once unhauled Jane Eyre, which was a very dumb move on my part, and I went out and got it again. So that's the joys of unhauling and hauling and all of that stuff. I hope that you guys are doing well. In the description box below, you can check out my Goodreads, my Instagram, my Amazon wish list. Not that I need more books, but you can see what I'm interested in these days. And my Patreon. Hope you're doing well, and I'll talk with you soon. Bye!